Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into a complex geopolitical picture. You know, they say the most dangerous war is often the one you can't quite see.
That's definitely true. We waded through a whole stack of material articles, research, our own notes, really trying to pull out the surprising bits.
Yeah, the hidden layers beneath the headlines.
Exactly. And the mission here is to figure out how conflicts that look separate, like Ukraine and the situation with Iran, might actually be connected moves, strategic moves in a much bigger game.
And that's really the heart of it today, isn't it? We're looking at how these things, Ukraine, Iran, they aren't just, isolated events between country A and country B.
Right.
Our sources are pointing towards them being, calculated plays on a kind of global chessboard. And the fascinating part, it's not just about land or fighting in the traditional sense.
No, not at all.
There seem to be these really powerful economic drivers, this push for global power, the flow of dollars, and ultimately control. Control over what comes next.
Precisely. Take the Russian invasion of Ukraine. On the surface, maybe it looked like a land grab, sure. But sources suggest it was also a very strong message.
A message to whom?
To America, to NATO, basically. Stay out of my strategic backyard.
Okay, let's unpack that. What made Ukraine so strategically important for Russia to send that kind of message?
Well, from Moscow's viewpoint, if Ukraine joins NATO, you could potentially have American missiles, maybe 500 kilometers from the capital. That's a huge perceived threat.
Oh, right, a direct security concern.
A direct security concern, yeah. But there's this other layer our sources really emphasize. Energy. Russia used to supply Europe with a lot of cheap natural gas, remember?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
And then suddenly those taps were turned off, more or less. Europe was scrambling, paying much higher prices for alternatives.
Exactly. So you have to ask, in that immediate chaos, who actually benefited from Europe needing new energy suppliers fast? It wasn't really Ukraine, and arguably Russia's long-term gains are very debatable there too.
So who did benefit?
Well, what's really striking is the impact on the U.S. energy sector. Sources show that after Russian gas supplies dropped, American LNG liquefied natural gas exports to Europe, they just surged.
Surged by how much?
Over 140% in 2022 alone, according to the data we looked at. America became Europe's biggest LNG supplier. That's a significant economic win, right in the middle of all this geopolitical tension.
Wow. Okay, so it really becomes about economic leverage then. Who controls the resources?
It often does.
So Ukraine is one piece. Let's shift to another key area you mentioned, Iran. We know sanctions have hit their economy hard, but then Russia steps in. What did the sources say about that connection?
Yeah, the sources detailed this kind of exchange. Russia basically offered a lifeline, saying, look, give us your drones and we'll give you dollars.
And those are the drones we've heard about being used in Ukraine?
Reportedly, yes.
Yeah.
Extensively. So that deal really ties these two situations together quite directly.
But Iran's goals here, they're probably bigger than just getting some cash, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Iran isn't just looking for aid. The sources we reviewed suggest they have a much broader strategic vision. They want to be a dominant regional power.
How so? What does that look like?
Well, things like establishing a land bridge, basically controlled corridor from Tehran right to the Mediterranean Sea, strengthening their network of proxy forces, developing asymmetric capabilities to challenge the existing powers.
And that puts them directly up against others in the region, like Israel.
Exactly. Especially Israel.
And how do the sources describe Israel's approach in all this? They have their own strategy, obviously.
They do. The sources use pretty strong language, actually. They say Israel doesn't just defend, they, quote, play to finish.
Yeah.
It suggests a very proactive, maybe even decisive stance when they feel their interests are threatened.
Okay, so connecting these dots, you have Russia backing Iran maybe as a way to distract or undermine the U.S.?
That seems to be the implication in some analyses, yes.
And then America trying to isolate Iran, which fits into maintaining its own influence. And meanwhile, you mentioned China.
Yeah, China. Sort of the economic giant, watching from the sidelines, potentially calculating its own moves, positioning itself. It makes you realize this isn't just a two-sided fight anywhere.
No, it's definitely not. It's this complex, multi-layered game.
A game where, ordinary people often feel like they're just caught in the middle, pawns in these bigger power plays maybe. Mm-hmm. It certainly makes you read the news differently.
So when you hear about Ukraine next, or Iran, maybe think beyond just the immediate conflict, the territory.
Right. The real question, according to these analyses, is about who shapes the next world order. It's driven by these deeper currents: power, dollars, and that ultimate quest for control.
It's much bigger than NATO versus Russia or just regional disputes.
Definitely more complex.
So think about it. What do you think is really happening on this global chessboard? And in this often invisible contest, who do you think ultimately comes out on top?